Escape from Tarkov is a hardcore FPS by Battlestate Games available only on PC. It's not on Steam or any other distribution service, but it can be bought through Battlestate Games' website in a closed beta state at a variety of different tiers and prices, granting you instant access. The premise of Escape from Tarkov is simple. You have a global inventory of items that you use to equip your character. You then go on raids into one of several locations where your only goal is to extract out of the map. If you die while on a raid, you lose all of your items, but if you live and extract successfully, you'll keep whatever you were able to carry. This is the core of what Escape from Tarkov is. There are no other game modes, but there is a persistent online world around your character, which we'll get to in a moment. First, I want to talk about the moment-to-moment gameplay, then we'll talk the overall progression system, quests, and how the game performs. As mentioned, Escape from Tarkov has just one game mode, the Raid. Currently, there are 4 locations to do raids: Factory, Customs, Woods, and Shoreline, with several locked maps being teased by the developers on their social media. The maps vary in size and difficulty, which it displays beforehand, giving you a small indication of what to expect when picking one. When you begin a raid, you'll be placed randomly into one of a few starting locations on the map, and you'll have a certain time limit to extract out of the map at one of a few extraction points. There will also be other players in the same situation and AI dotted around points of interest in randomized groups with varying types of gear. Without a map or looking it up online, you'll have no real way of telling where your extraction point is, other than the name of it, like tunnel or rock passage. That's all the information you have and your time limit to extract. Some of these extractions can be randomized also. You won't know if it's available until you get there. Some require a boat to be in port, a car to be ready, a certain gate to be open, while others will be static and available at all times to you. Certain escapes may even require you to pay to get transport out of a map as a sort of shortcut. Because of the structure of the maps, with players needing to traverse across them to get to their extraction, and large points of interest with good loot, it doesn't take long for players to converge around the AI. Combat, which we'll get to in a bit more detail later, is essentially extremely cumbersome and visceral. It doesn't feel smooth or easy to move around. It's purposefully awkward to manage your ammo, and there's a real sense of shock and suppression when in combat, with deafening explosions and ricochets going off all around you.
I'm gonna dash to you guys, ready?
Yeah, got you covered, go.
Yep.
In the closet? Yeah. Are you okay? Are you okay? Jesus Christ! Gotta throw one up on the egg.
Oh shit. Cuss, those are players.
Let's see if I can flank around, okay?
Are you sure?
Yes, 100%.
You'll typically only be able to survive 2 or 3 direct hits, and without any body armor, you're essentially a one-hit kill. If you do get hit, different status effects will impair your ability to see what's happening and react quickly, blurring your vision, darkening your surroundings, and deafening your character. The AI patrols certain areas of the map and can range from being absurdly vigilant at great distances to practically blind, and the same is true for their aim. Regardless of weapon, they'll take shots at you from any range, and if they do have a long-range weapon, they can often pick you off very quickly with a one-tap to the head. It can be frustrating, but I very much enjoy the challenge. After many hours of play, you'll work out the patterns of the AI, but every now and then they'll do something you don't expect with a surprise flank, dropping prone to take cover, and seemingly working together with one suppressing fire while another moves to get an angle on you. Even with groups of players, we've had a serious challenge fighting the AI at times, as they are often better and more coordinated than most low-level players. It's been a real rush fighting them and can often be hard to tell when it's a player and when it isn't, which is a great sign. You'll spend most of your time walking or running around and looting. However, practically every significant loot spot has AI there or will attract players, so it's a very intense sort of looting. I never felt like I was completely safe and just bored while looking through stuff. I always felt on the edge of my seat trying to get it done so I could be less vulnerable. Once you've found some good loot, and maybe snagged yourself a couple of kills, you'll make your way to the extraction and leave the game. Then you'll get to see who you killed and how you performed. Kills give you experience, so right now, Escape from Tarkov is a completely kill-on-sight game, as there's no incentive to let someone live, and there's no proximity chat to even give someone that chance. There have been talks of a karma system for your character, so that may be something we see more of in future.
Extracting. 6, 5, 4, 3. Sorry, buddy. Nothing personnel.
Escape from Tarkov has a strong focus on realism. You'll need to consume food and stay hydrated during your raid to survive. The more you run around, the faster your hydration will deplete, and the more you carry, the slower you are, and again, your hydration and energy will go down faster because of that. Individual limbs are affected differently when damaged or shot, so for instance, getting shot in the leg will cause you to limp. Getting shot in the arm will throw off your aim. And you can also take a hit to the stomach, where you won't be able to consume food properly, and there's always the chance of bleeding or broken bones, which need to be patched up or persevered through. Currently, if you escape, all of your ailments are healed. A few times I've been bleeding out but managed to hobble my way to an extraction and get out before I died. I actually broke both of my legs once and crawled my way to the exit, which might sound, maybe not that interesting, but it was an amazing intense escape for me. Your weapon and how you operate it is realistically simulated also. Bullets need to be manually loaded into the magazine before being placed in a gun. If you only have one magazine, you can't automatically reload. You'll need to eject your mag manually and fill it up with the correct bullets in the inventory screen. You can even fill it with multiple types of bullets as long as the caliber is correct. Pressing the reload key will only work if you have another magazine in your inventory somewhere your character can reach, like an available pocket. For instance, if you were carrying a bag on your back and the magazine was in there, simply pressing the reload key won't reload your weapon, your character can't reach it. If your pockets are full, the mag you're exchanging will be dropped on the ground, so what's typically good to do is to take a few magazines with you and then some loose bullets. That way, you can rotate the mags and fill up each clip individually. Magazines and how many bullets are in them is constantly tracked, so if you have 30 shots in a mag and you fire 20, reloading the gun will mean you place the remaining 10 mag in your pocket in exchange for another mag. That mag will always have 10 out of 30 in it, until you manually fill it up. So Tarkov is all about simulating the delay it takes to perform actions in the real world. By opening up your inventory and filling a mag with bullets, it simulates that extended time it would take to do that. Of course it would take much longer in the real world, but the time it takes is enough for you to panic, make mistakes, and deliver a sense of real urgency in a firefight. It feels great. Every action takes time to do: bandaging, using an aid kit, taking a drink, and of course, looting. When you open a container or bag, your character will begin searching through it. Over time, the items will appear and only then can you grab them. Further to that, when starting off, virtually every item you find will only display a silhouette. This means you need to examine it to figure out what it is, and this also takes a bit of time. So when you're in a hurry, often you may search a body and just grab everything they have without even knowing what half the stuff is. If someone was carrying a bag, you can just take the bag without ever even opening it. It's really cool, and it makes the game extremely immersive, which I'm a big fan of. Now obviously this type of gameplay isn't for everyone. If you're a fan of military sims like Squad or Arma, then this is right up your alley. Now if you're just a fan of PUBG and think you may be interested in this game, they are wildly different experiences. Tarkov is a lot like being in the top 10 of PUBG all the time, except dying in Tarkov can mean you lose hours of progress, and it's certainly not as easy to pick up and play. Another game it's often compared to is DayZ. The DayZ mod was one of the first games that really introduced the feeling of risk and survival in a realistic setting. You could play for hours and hours getting items and then lose it all in a short burst of time, which makes that time feel very intense. However, I feel like Tarkov is more akin to the Arma Exile mod. In that mod, it ditched the zombies of DayZ and introduced AI and PvE missions in the PvP world. It also allowed you to build bases and store items across multiple sessions, so again it's very reminiscent of what we're seeing in Tarkov. I personally love the slow-paced combat, the depth of customization you have, the individual damage models on limbs, and the combination of AI and player-driven games. DayZ, Arma Exile, Insurgency, and Squad are all games I've enjoyed, and this is one of the best ones I've played of those type of realistic shooters. In between raids, you're able to view your global stash. This is where you store everything from your raids and everything you've purchased. Weapons, armor, money, whatever it may be, if it's not on your character, it goes here. Your stash has a finite amount of space, so eventually it will fill up completely. Even your money will take up space in your stash. You can interact with several traders to buy and sell the items you want. Each trader tends to specialize in certain things, but there is some crossover, and it's actually a live trading pool with other players buying and selling things to the same traders, changing the value on the market in minutes. Here's where the progression elements come in. I mentioned that when you finish the raid you gain experience. This XP contributes to your overall level, and each trader has 4 tiers of goods to acquire. To progress a trader to the next tier of items, you need to be a higher level, and you need also good standing with them, and you also need to have transferred a certain amount of money through them. Now, money and leveling is pretty self-explanatory on how you get it, but standing is a bit more complicated. To improve your standing with a trader, you'll need to do certain tasks for them. Some of the early ones for the therapist were just to find some medical supplies and transfer them to her. However, later on the tasks get more complicated, such as finding a key in one map that opens a door in another map where you can get a certain item that you need to extract with in a certain time frame. Failing to do them in their time frames lowers the standing with the trader. These missions add great replayability to the maps. Now you don't only need to get in and out with whatever you can find, but you also need to do small subtasks and go to places you might not otherwise know about. Once you start gaining standing and fulfill the other requirements, you'll get access to higher tier tactical gear. Now, even guys in riot gear can be killed by a man with a hatchet, so high tier players aren't necessarily that much better than low tier players, but they are definitely bringing an advantage into the fight. They're also bringing in considerably more risk, as the cost of items is extremely expensive at higher tiers. It's all about the risk versus the reward. If you take a 150,000 ruble sniper rifle, you better be sure you know how to use it. With only 5 traders and 4 maps, Tarkov has given me close to 30 hours of playtime, and I'm only tier 2 with 2 traders as of writing this review, so I have a very long way to go. There's a ton of content to get through and a lot to learn about the different tasks and items, and it's a very addicting and rewarding system to try and reach the higher tiers. Traders will also require items sometimes instead of hard cash, so for instance, for a beastly sniper that I've been eyeing up, I need 3 car batteries and 3 rechargeable batteries. I've even made a little note in the quest log to remember to look out for them when I'm on a raid, in case I forget the name of certain objects, as I have around 20 things to keep track of. I'm currently looking for hard drives, graphics cards, certain types of lamp, and all these different types of batteries. So again, it just gives you that little side mission when you're on a raid to look out for a very specific item. You might not bother checking a computer normally, but if you're looking for a stick of RAM, it might be the most valuable thing you came into the raid for. Now, this progression all sounds and plays very well and good, but what if you just suck? What if you lose your guns and your items and you're reduced to nothing? Well, one solution is insurance. Before a raid, you'll have a chance to pay a trader to insure your items for a certain amount of money based on the item's value. Now, if you get killed in a raid and nobody takes your item, then you'll get it back if it was insured after around 24 hours. You then have a 12-hour window to claim that item or you lose it. So you have to actively log back into the game to check if your insurance came through. You'll get a message if it was unsuccessful as well. Often you'll insure items and receive some of them back. It's fairly rare that you'll get killed and not looted. Insurance on the whole isn't too expensive, so I'd always recommend doing it. Your other option is to play as a scav. Playing as a scavenger will drop you into a game in progress, replacing an AI. You'll also be friendly to the other AI scavs, so you can avoid combat with them if you want. You'll have random loot and a random condition and a lot less time to escape. If you make it out as a scav, then you'll get to keep the gear he had and store it in your global stash. You won't gain any XP though, and most quests won't be doable as a scav unless it's just handing in some generic items to a trader. So this is a no-risk method of getting gear. You can kill players and take everything they had, or you might have a bag and can load up as normal. However, the scav have a 30-minute cooldown, so you can't just constantly play as a scav to earn loot. I played as scav almost exclusively when I first got the game to get used to the mechanics without the fear of losing anything, but now I practically never play scav as I'm all about the progression on my main character. You can also just do a solo run in an offline sort of mode. This is also another no-risk way to just explore maps, find hidden locations, and test out your weapons in the field. However, in this mode, you can't take out any items, and you'll reset to as you were before the raid on exit, so it's very much just an offline practice mode. One of the final things I wanted to touch on was the in-depth customization of guns and items. Every gun can be stripped down to its vital components, rebuilt, and expanded upon. If you have something like an AK, you can get a rail mount and then a scope that fits the rail. The annoying aspect of this is that the UI is not very clear when it comes to the traders about what fits on what gun. You can inspect items and show compatibility, but the game really needs a filter option. Highlighting your weapon and then having all compatible trader items would save an incredible amount of tedium trying to find what fits on what. When you do eventually get what you need and start understanding the system, it's extremely rewarding to build your gun. You can customize it however you want, even putting a sight on top of another sight if you wanted. You can have different sights attached to the sides of guns, get different grips, stocks, flashlights, larger mags, silencers, lasers, and all sorts of scopes with varying magnification levels. It's probably the most in-depth gun customization I've ever seen in a game, and it really is the basis for fueling my progression. I want to get to the next trader tier so I can equip more stuff on my weapons. So with all the mechanics and gameplay out of the way, it's time to talk performance. Escape from Tarkov runs on Unity. I'm not sure why out of all the engines to work with they chose Unity for this type of project, but they have, and honestly they've done things I never thought possible with the engine and achieved a level of graphical fidelity that rivals a lot of other games on the market. Not many games do it, but aiming down sights and scopes actually just magnifies the scope on the screen. It seems to be just a digital magnification rather than a partial FOV change, so it can be a bit pixelated, but it's still a really cool effect that makes the whole experience feel a lot more real. One drawback is that there's no anti-aliasing, which is very noticeable. I'm using an i7-5930K, which is a very good CPU, and a GTX 980 Ti, which is a pretty good graphics card and 32 gigs of RAM. My FPS fluctuates pretty wildly around the 50 FPS mark most of the time on the highest preset, and on the ultra preset it drops to around 35. Experimenting with certain options can give dramatic improvements to performance, but overall I'd say the whole thing is just pretty inconsistent and not very well optimized in its current state, as it seems to vary on different hardware wildly. Now I've clocked the Tarkov process using 11 gigs of RAM on multiple occasions. I've never seen any single program use this amount of RAM, and I'm not sure why it uses so much. Now playing it on low settings doesn't actually make the game look that bad. It still looks pretty decent and runs way better, so I'd recommend lowering it down if you don't care too much about the graphical fidelity. Something as well that seems to be a bit off is 3D positional sound. It might just be a bit different to most games, but sounds are extremely amplified even if far away, and the direction of sounds sometimes feels a bit off. I'll hear someone shooting, turn to look and see a muzzle flash way off in the distance in a bit of a different direction. A known issue for sure is allies sometimes are silent in their footsteps, and I'm not sure if this can also happen for enemies, which would be a massive issue as so much can rely on listening to where the enemy is. A broader problem is the constant lag spikes and network lag. This is one of the most frustrating aspects of the game, and in periods of high server traffic, it's extremely noticeable with friendly players skipping around and lag spikes always happening during intense combat. Desync is another issue where players will stop moving on my screen, but the game client doesn't display an error for around 5 minutes, so you need to kill the process of the game and reconnect. During this, your body is just in the world sitting there waiting to be killed. I'd say this happens to me about once every 10 raids, and it's only happened at peak times when I'm in a group. If you desync, you can't extract, and I've never had that when I play solo. It's worth mentioning I live in the UK and I was playing with US players, so that might have exaggerated the network lag between us. As with a lot of these multiplayer games that gain popularity quickly, they've said they're ordering more servers and upgrading as fast as they can to cope with the demand. They've also said it will help them prepare for the open beta, but I'm not too sure what that means, because anyone could buy and play the game now anyway, so I'm not sure what makes this a closed beta. Escape from Tarkov is an excellent FPS with some MMO qualities that keeps me coming back for more time and time again. It's one of those games that when I'm not playing it, I'm thinking about it, and when I'm working, I'm very tempted to fire it up for just a quick raid. It turns minutes into hours and is an extremely fun co-op game to play with friends, as coordination is so important. There's plenty of content to chew through, and it's clear that more will be added over time with different maps and the quest lines. Unfortunately, in this beta state, it's held back by server issues, desync bugs, and an unreliable performance. This hasn't stopped me playing, and honestly for whatever reason doesn't really frustrate me too much, but it cannot go unnoticed and is something that definitely needs to be fixed. I'm very excited to see what's added in future, with several bits of UI pointing to a live auction house for items, a flea market, more maps and guns, and hopefully more missions and quests. There's also talk of a karma system, multiple character support, and more interactive elements within maps, so I think the future looks pretty bright for Escape from Tarkov. There are currently 4 editions of the game on Battlestates' website. Generally, the increased pricing will give you a bigger global stash, allowing you to store more items. This can be useful when you need several large items for a trade, and so you need to store them for a while. Higher editions will also give you a better standing with traders, which will save you a lot of time for getting the higher tiers. For me personally, I would get the Left Behind edition and then upgrade if you felt you needed it. I don't think the highest tier is all that worth it. It'll give you a higher tier equipment straight away, but one bad run and you could just lose it all. So that's it for my review of Escape from Tarkov's beta. Some people ask why I review early access games and betas. It's because these are still products that you can buy, and I always intend on coming back to review them when they've had their final release. Betas can change over the course of weeks or months, but I feel this review represents a solid foundation of what the game is to inform consumers about what they're paying for. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know if you enjoyed this review and let me know what you think of Escape from Tarkov. These reviews are primarily funded by good folks on Patreon. Without their support, I could not do these reviews. Please consider helping fund this project if you enjoyed it, and leave a like or share it with friends if you want others to see it. Thank you very much again, and I'll see you in the next one.